Welcome back, everybody, to another live stream. And today's show is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a meta show because I'm going to introduce my friends from the Sprocket Podcast, podcast that I've been on a couple times. It's been one of the long-standing bikey podcasts on the internet. And we're going to do their show live, but I'm going to kick it off with a quick interview so you get to know them. But before we join our guests and start this podcast, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters. You guys make this content possible. And if you like the YouTube channel and its focus on the non-competitive side of cycling, all the links below to support the channel via Patreon and all that good stuff. And welcome to the show, guys. This is the Sprocket Podcast.
This is great. I love it.
So you guys have been on for quite a while. How many years has it been since the Sprocket Podcast has started?
I think technically this is going to be 10 in November was the first taping back in 2010. So that was when I started. And Aaron, you came in 2012, 2011, thereabouts.
So I rarely go by years. I go by episode number.
Yeah.
Which is actually even more misleading because we've released so many under 230 A, B, or whatever. So I do know I started as a regular host on episode 200. That would be 2 years in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many episodes do you guys have total now on the podcast?
This would be 531.
That's right.
Holy smokes. That is some commitment.
Yeah, and then Guthrie, you've been with us for about 2 years now, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Cool. Well, for those that aren't aware, just really quickly, what is the Sprocket Podcast about? What kind of stories do you guys cover?
I think you summed it up pretty well with the non-competitive angle. I think we were talking before we went live. You're the more professional, I think, when it comes to just technical aspects and everything. You've really got it together. We're still working on that part. But the non-competitive cycling and general BS when it comes to bicycles and what you do on two wheels when you're not trying to get ahead of the other guy.
Yeah. I feel like there's a big dearth in the content around this kind of, I don't want to just say casual cycling, but non-competitive cycling. And I think COVID's a pretty good opportunity to bring that content out to the masses, just because there are some new cyclists since the pandemic. So.
Oh yeah. Our local shops can't even hold bikes in their inventory. Every time I go to a shop, they're like, yeah, we just sold our last one yesterday, which I guess is a great problem to have. That just means there's more bikes out there. Yeah, a lot more people are biking. I think in some way this is an experiment to prove how big of an umbrella bicycling really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've had people on, that do the whole utility bike. We have people with Bach feet and all that. We have family bikers on. And we've even had a few racers, and I'm going to put that in heavy quotes on, because we rarely talk about racing specifically, but it's mostly just, what is your experience on a bike? And there's just so many stories out there. And it's such a wide variety.
Cool.
I think that was the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so I think something that underlines the show is a lot of folks we approach to talk with say, oh, I'm not a, quote unquote cyclist. And that's great. We're like, yes, well, we would love to talk to you because I think anybody that has an interaction or is thinking of interacting with a bicycle, they have a home with us. And we love talking with folks who are just all different levels and approaches to cycling. I think your quote on Twitter put it pretty well, welcoming people to the sport versus welcoming people to ride bicycles.
Right.
That's some stuff what we try to do pretty well.
Yeah. Guthrie's referencing a bicycling article about welcoming new cyclists to the sport of cycling, and I had tweeted that no one does that for driving. No one says welcome to the sport of driving. You just become a driver.
It's even less become a rite of passage that a lot of people have made it to be. Back when you get your license, it was like, now the world is yours. It's way less than what it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So we've got some people in the chat here. Let us know where you are watching from, and if you are already familiar with the Sprocket podcast or listen to one of their 500 episodes, which is just incredible. Brass tacks. Where can people listen to the podcast?
On the internet.
On the internet.
Anywhere podcasts can be found. Yeah, the sprocketpodcast.com is kind of a catch-all. Like if you go there, that's where we are. But yeah, we're on iTunes, Spotify, and all the other places that you get it's not even called iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts, right? So yeah, that's how old I am.
So when you Brock, when you started the podcast, do you think it would be still going like a decade on?
I had no idea. I think I kind of hoped that it would, and I assumed that it wouldn't. And I've been happy to see that. I think largely in great part to Aaron and Guthrie being really willing. I had a couple of life changes that have taken me to new places and taken more of my time. And now I'm a father, so I have a kid to do things with as well. And so I've just got less time in all. But Aaron and Guthrie have been incredible, as well as our new, we've got some other new sub co-hosts that are becoming full-time co-hosts that are dropping in now. And I think the thing I'm most excited about with the Sprocket is that it's become like this enormously large tent that's way bigger than just me in my bedroom with a couple of microphones. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not even in your bedroom right now.
I know, right?
So we got Bike Vids here in the chat from Santa Cruz, California. Loves the Sprocket podcast for sure.
Hey, Bike Vids.
Is that Greg? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. If you guys have any questions for Sprocket Podcasts, ask them very quickly before I turn over the show format. And we do a super fancy NPR style live podcast.
Oh, are we supposed to get our input? You ready for this, Aaron?
How about unfancy NPR style?
Right.
We're more like tiny, super tiny desk style or something.
Right. Micro desk.
Micro desk.
Yeah, we were talking
attic style.
We were talking
Supple
earlier
desk
that
concerts.
that you guys doing a podcast, it's audio only. Whereas doing a live stream on the YouTubes, it's like you have to sound good and look good at the same time. less pressure on the podcast, except for this one. Sorry, guys.
So at what point should I professionally whiten my teeth?
Right.
Should I have done
about
that
15
earlier?
minutes in. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Nice.
Right before the hard-hitting journalism.
I'm just glad I have a face for radio. That's all I have to say.
Nice. So how is obviously you guys are all kind of co-hosting remotely. How else has COVID kind of changed the show?
Well, we used to concentrate mostly on in-person interviews. We've had a studio, whether it was Brock's basement or the last version was borrowing from studio space from X-Ray, our local radio station here. And we loved that. We're very excited about in person. And obviously that was an impossibility. And what was, I guess, the flip side of that was that broadened our guest range. Now we could get from potentially all over the world.
Right.
Yeah, so that's, I would say, the biggest change.
Case in point. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we have this backlog because that's, like Aaron was saying, kind of what we fight against is we're like, oh, we'd love to interview this person. So you send an email and they're like, I'm coming to Portland and so, and like, maybe it works out or maybe it doesn't. So I think we had like probably over 20 or 30 people that there's been an email with at some point in time that didn't make it to Portland that we get a chance to catch up with now. So that's really great.
Yeah. I would even extend that call here. If you contacted us and we haven't gotten back to you, contact us again, please.
Just keep on writing until we say, hey, what's up?
You'll get on eventually because we'll put on anybody.
Well, I think one of the things too is like one of the recent episodes that we just put out was with Johnny Moses, who did the GDMBR. Aside from that being now my new favorite acronym, I think it's I'm a big fan of what Johnny's up to, a big fan of the film, and we never would have had a chance. I mean, I guess the chance would have been there, but it wasn't where we were focused. And now, like you say, we're considering people from all over, and it's making it easier. And technology has gotten, frankly, a lot more easy to use. I think when I started doing remote interviews in 2011, we were using Skype, and Skype is no better now than it was then, but it's just kind of been not a great option anyways. And with a bunch of new platforms and people getting used to it, like it's kind of the like this is what people do now, and so there's a lot more people are used to the video conference technology, and the video conference thing works a lot better because I think, what'd you say, Aaron? I think we tried when we first transitioned out of the studio doing just audio only, and that just didn't work as well.
It was all
right?
but impossible. Yeah.
Right.
We were talking all over each other. Like there's definitely there's a communication that happens when you see somebody. There's body language, and then there's eye contact, and even though the video conferencing is not as obviously not as good as in person, it's yards better than just completely audio. You know, I don't know. I've never liked talking on the phone, but it's like even worse when you're trying to make a recording out of what is essentially talking over the phone.
Right. What we should do is we should hire some actors to read our transcriptions of text threads, right, and just get that put onto podcast. I think that could be really compelling content. Then you'd be comfortable, I'd be comfortable. Guthrie, you cool with that?
Works for me.
Like,
all right, cool. All right, sounds good. I'll look at our budget.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to check in with the YouTube comments real quick. Bike Bids. Yes, it was Greg. He said that was a great episode and super documentary. Yeah, if there's an upside to COVID as a content creator, it has made getting remote guests a lot easier. And like you guys said, the technology has kind of facilitated, just chatting with people, and people are at home because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and you guys, the YouTube audience, get to witness the magic of the Sprocket Podcast behind the scenes in real time. All right, so let's make it happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Turning it over to you guys.
So real quick point of order, gentlemen, who's reading what?
Ooh, good
We've
question.
never had 3 readers on there.
Should we just go in turn? I could be number 3.
We'll try.
Okay, sweet. This is what we do. We just bungle along as usual. It's great.
Yeah, this is actually one of the advantages of an audio podcast, is that we can edit these things after the fact.
It's going to sound amazing in post.
All right. Do you got the cue up, Aaron, or do you want to read it cold?
Oh, no, I've got it. Hang on a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
Is that going through?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Sprocket Podcast, where we're simplifying the good life. I'm Guthrie Straw.
And I'm Aaron Flores, broadcasting from the People's Republic of Portland, nestled in the heart of Cascadia.
And I'm Brock Dittis, and we are the show that brings you somewhat irreverent conversations about the intricacies of thinking locally with a global perspective and enjoying the best that life has to offer along the way.
Covering bicycling, trains and transit, adventures and life hacks. And today,
we got Russ Roca of The Path Less Pedaled.
The Path Less Pedaled, which I think we can honestly say is our favorite bicycle brand out there. In bicycle media and bicycling culture, the best brand.
Oh yeah. Have you copyrighted The Pond Less Fished yet?
I have not. Okay. Next steps.
The Pond Less Pedal Fished.
Right.
The river less rifled.
Yes, the fish less bicycled.
Russ is a content creator, YouTuber, and good friend and fellow of the show. Thank you so much for joining us this eve, Russ. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I think I've been on a couple times, at least like 3, I think. All in various like stages of life and bikiness, which is kind of fascinating.
Well, I think what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the rest of you guys, I'd like to go over, first of all, the historical connection and intersections of the Path Less Pedaled and the Sprocket Podcast. I don't have the episode numbers, but I do have years 2011. First of, I think, Russ, you and Laura were on the podcast on episode 8, I want to say. Like,
oh, dang, that's early.
you were our very first guests that we did not know personally, I'm pretty sure.
What an honor.
I know.
Yeah. Well, and I remember because I had been following, I'm a big fan of bicycle travel. And I believe when you started it was a website, it was a blog. You started sharing content back then. And I feel bad I didn't do my research, but is it still archived all the way back? Like, can people?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to, but when we were selling all the stuff.
Yeah. So it was something that was something I wanted to do, but wasn't in a position to, I guess. And you guys were essentially living the life that I fantasized about. And so you had just finished, was it 2 years on the road?
Yeah, about 2 and some change, and we were wintering in Portland then.
That's right. Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, that was when you decided to stay in Portland for some time, for an extended period.
Right.
So I'm glad that the city won you over for a little while.
Yeah.
And it was a gift to the city that you were there as well. But yeah, 2011, that was when we met and we had you come in. And so I'll put the plug in for episode 8. That was you folks fresh off the road telling stories about what it was like to ride. And at that time, your setups were Surly long haul truckers. Is that right?
Yeah, Surly long haul truckers, 4 panniers, handlebar bag, and a Ortlieb duffel across the back. So definitely opposite of ultralight.
Well, and if I remember correctly, an extension cord, because there's free electricity in bathrooms, but you shouldn't edit video in the bathroom.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
You got to charge things.
Pro tip, don't edit video in the bathroom.
Precisely. I think after that, you folks came back later in the year to talk about your Brompton tour, because at that point, Bromptons were a new thing to you as well. And I remember it was a fundraising thing, a pledge. What's the term? Like crowdfunding? Yes.
Yeah, we were crowdsourcing like a bike and train, documenting how that works, just because we're fans of multimodal transit, and it's a good way to make bike touring more accessible. We did an Indiegogo, didn't quite hit the mark, but we traveled anyways and made some videos about it.
Yeah, and the plus of Indiegogo is you get to keep whatever you raise, right? As opposed to other crowdfunding platforms, which will just pull your entire project out from under you.
Yeah.
So you got to go. You had Bromptons, and I think you had some really instructive travel tips for people with Bromptons, because you were doing all kinds of innovative things that I think people might have done before, but no one was thinking about. And I think you brought them a lot farther into the fore of kind of bicycling and bicycle travels thought process in general. So that was episode number 2. Not episode number 2, but the second one that you joined us for. Skip ahead to 2012, and you had been to New Zealand,
mm-hmm.
and then you came back. And I believe we talked to you on your return, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So New Zealand, famously, where you guys had an amazing time, and you got punched in the face.
Yeah. Incident of international road rage. Which was kind of nuts, and it led to interesting experiences afterwards. Getting invited to tea with the mayor of Christchurch, staying with like the equivalent of a congressperson in New Zealand, and it was strange times.
Yeah. Well, and just absolutely beautiful. I think it was like at that time, The Lord of the Rings was only under 10 years old, and everybody still had that fresh in their minds too. And so it was the perfect time to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then let's see, let's skip forward. I want to say it might've been 2013 when you were producing an advertisement for local Portland bicycle shop, Clever Cycles, for the Dutch Tub, which was the wood-fired, rentable, delivered by bike,
R.I.P.
backyard
Dutch
hot
Tub.
tub.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still
Pouring
around.
out
They're just
for
not
you.
rentable anymore, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Dutch Tub itself is still around. The one at Clever Cycles is gone.
Yeah.
For our listeners, real quick, what's a Dutch tub, if anyone hasn't heard of before?
It's a Dutch tub is basically a big wood-fired hot tub. I think it was a Swedish company, and the company or the bike shop in town, Clever Cycles, would deliver it to your door. You could rent it. I can actually show the video clip. Can I do that just for the
Oh, yeah.
people for
Sure.
watching?
Let's take this
I
trip
was-
down memory lane.
Let's
gonna
use
say.
this YouTube.
I just queued it up just as we let's see, pin speaker view, pin video. I don't know if it's going to play the audio. Tell me if it does or if it doesn't, but people can at least get the visual of it.
If
I
it
think-
doesn't, you have to narrate it, Brock.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Is it playing audio? No. Okay, so that's Brock, half dressed in the Dutch tub,
Yes.
and that's what it looks like for the YouTube viewers. Basically, a giant bowl of soup with some kind of coals in which you build a fire next to, and yeah, for a time you could rent it in Portland. There's the coils. You have to stoke it, and I think it took a couple hours. You really have to work at it to get it hot.
But bicyclists are big fans of stoke, right?
Yes. So in this tutorial video that we're showing, it shows what's included. You get some kindling. What was that? A wok and a paddle.
Yeah.
And a big fire starter. One of the big things is you had to shim the Dutch tub because you had to imagine it's this giant bowl of boiling hot, or not boiling, really hot water, and you don't want it tipping over because it would be literally a hot mess.
Mhm. Nor do you want the fire to go anywhere.
Right. Dutch tub kit did not come with that robe though, that you have on in the video, Brock.
That's true. Yeah, the robe I brought with me. It was exciting. It was a fun morning. I feel like it was a little bit chilly. And
How was
yeah,
craft services during that shoot? Was it?
it was
pretty good?
amazing. I got several servings of whiskey, as I recall.
Because it took a while to get it up to temperature, like hours.
It did. Yeah. And I mean, you can be in the water for some of the time, but not all the time.
So I love this part of the video. Sorry, YouTube audience or podcast audience, but you can actually cook on the fire element. I think that's what the wok was for.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
we made some tea. So it's basically part camp stove, part hot tub. And there's the wok.
Shrimp. You could put shrimp in there.
You could.
And we did.
Let me fast forward to the enjoy. So last minute beauty shots. Again, Brock.
I like that there's an off camera person that's stirring the water for me. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that, yeah.
These phantom hands just from off camera.
So
And there
yeah,
it is on the bike.
that's right.
And that is the Dutch tub, people.
Really
So-
was glorious. And so I want to thank you, Russ, for the opportunity, because that was that's another thing I never saw coming, I think, when the
Right.
podcast started. So yeah. And then 2014, Oregon Scenic Bikeways. You had always been doing a little bit of video editing, but this, I think you contracted out and you started making things for other people. And Oregon has a nice scenic bikeway program, and so I think you did both some interviews and some promos and that sort of thing. What do you remember about that? Because you did a number of those.
Yeah, so Oregon Scenic Bikeway, it's I think there's 14 or 15 iconic routes throughout the state, and it was actually one of our first and largest jobs as a video production company. I literally ordered a bunch of camera gear for the very first shoot and had it shipped to John Day via Amazon Prime. And the day before we're leaving, I'm unboxing a slider, a camera and a lens.
Oh wow!
And initially they had asked us to write a story and take photography, and the creative director at the time at Travel Oregon said, "Hey, can you make videos while you're out there?" And I said, "Of course I can. I've been watching YouTube tutorials."
I do this a lot.
Yeah. So they commissioned us to do the first one. Didn't really know where it was going to go, but they liked it enough to hire us for next. I think we had that contract for about 4 or 5 years and do the following, the rest of the videos around that project. But that was really trial by fire, because the first one, it was Laura and I and her brother as the talent. And then, we met with the creative director again, and they're like, okay, can you do 8 more this year and work with different talent? So we very quickly went from, myself just Amazon priming a bunch of camera equipment to becoming a mini video production company. And that just really accelerated the learning curve in all things video production.
It's pretty incredible. I do appreciate. I remember. I think when the call went out for talent, and I really wanted to be a part of it. But I also remember that I think there was a bit of a push for people that didn't necessarily look like a big white dude like I am, and I really appreciate that you guys worked hard to find a variety of different people. Of different appearances from different backgrounds that were able to represent the opportunities in Oregon, and that's an early step, I think, towards kind of being aware of kind of the lack of representation of all kinds of people in bicycling media. So I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, that was actually, looking back, that's one of the things that we were most proud of in doing that project. Not so much learning how to fly a drone and all that stuff, but the creative director had said, okay, you have to you want to show diversity, and it was in Portland, aspect of the Portland bikie scene is pretty white, and we really stretched to make sure that women were represented, people of color wherever we would find them were represented, and at the time. When those videos came out, there was no other bicycle, or at least to my knowledge, bicycle destination marketing that didn't have just, your typical roadies as part of the marketing collateral. So I think that's the one aspect of the project that we were most proud of.
Yeah, and deservedly so. It's really one of the most valuable things I think you could have done with that opportunity, and you did it. So thank you. And then there were other things that happened in Portland, but I think my last memory was the party at Ride with GPS, where everybody bid you a fond farewell. What took you away from Portland, and why must we be in such a terrible position not to have you here?
And what can we do to bring you back?
Right. Ultimately, what it was Laura took a job with Adventure Cycling. It's an organization that we respected for a long time. And this opportunity came up for her to kind of manage the U.S. bicycle route system. And at the time, we were also getting into fishing and wanted to do more outdoor stuff. We were kind of bummed that you had to drive, hour to Sandy Ridge to ride mountain bikes. Wanted something with more kind of local outdoor access. And stars just aligned, and that's what brought us here, currently to Missoula. Laura's last day at Adventure Cycling, coincidentally, was last week. So now she's a full-time intern at Pat Plus Pell.
Yeah, we get our videos.
Yeah.
Well, that means you can come back then.
So yes, I'm hearing you're free agents now.
Yeah, well, we're definitely, with the YouTube, that's one of the big luxuries is that we don't have to be physically tied. We just need a place where we can have at least decent Wi-Fi once a week to do live streams and upload videos. So we are kind of looking at places potentially with less winter.
Yeah,
I would say. Oh yeah, it seems like you get a pretty good testing ground for what you're up to these days, though. There's definitely those advantages as opposed to for Portland, to your example, you'd have to ride a fair bit to put the bikes through the ringer, even in that respect.
Yeah, just out the door, we've got, single track, like maybe 2 miles that way, taking single track to more single track, within maybe 8 minutes, but there's a nice gravel climb. You can climb, up to 2,000 feet if you want, and then take single track down or gravel road down. So in terms of like a compact place to live with good testing grounds for bikes, it's pretty good. And the fishing's good. I mean, there's we're about a block away from a creek that holds trout. So in terms of the outdoor stuff, it's pretty good. There's just a lot of winter and it's long.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all used to living in Oregon where, especially in Western Oregon, where the winters, even if there is some snow or some ice occasionally, they're pretty mild. How do you spend your winters in Missoula?
Or
should I ask?
You don't have to say any more than that.
That's when I explore other hobbies such as watercolors.
Right on.
And I'll switch to trail running at a certain point just because it's easier than fat biking. Or last winter, our winter sport was Arizona until COVID. And I think we might do something similar this winter as well. Like we gave the first 2 winters an honest try, but it's just Some people are cold weather people. I'm not one of those persons.
Now, it's important to reckon with that and to know, especially like you say, if you're at a point of opportunity where you could relocate and all of your work and all of your other obligations kind of lend themselves to that, then why not find a place that gives you a winter that you can work with?
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about watercolor? Because you're pretty damn good at it.
Thanks. Yeah, it really did come out of winter. And also just fatigue from editing videos all day. Like I wanted a very like analog just hobby, and watercolor was that. Ironically, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube tutorial videos on how to watercolor, so I didn't quite escape the computer. But yes, I've been doing it for quasi seriously for the last 2 years. We've had some mini like watercolor shows. Our hope was pre-COVID was to do like kind of a moving bikey watercolor show at different bike shops, and we did a couple of them. And then pandemic happened. We drove straight back here, but it's been a fun kind of hobby. We made some postcards and sell those. So
yeah, what did the shows at bike shops look like?
So the last one we had was at Transit in Tucson. And they're pretty chill. Like we'll work with the bike shop to help promote it. We'll kind of move the furniture around, and I'll hang up anywhere between a dozen to maybe 20 paintings of various sizes. There's a couple behind me which are blurry. Really just simple presentation, just clothesline and clothespins. And it's just a fun way to mingle with people, talk about bikes and art, but to have like another kind of point of interest there, because like at some bike gatherings it just turns into drinking, just like all beer. So by having that art aspect, there is like another touch point of conversation and interaction. Sure. So
what made you choose watercolor as a medium?
Mostly because it's fairly portable. Like you can get super tiny watercolor kits. Doesn't require any solvents, unlike oils or acrylics. And I don't know, it's really challenging. It's controlled chaos. Yeah. Because with oils and acrylics, you can go light over dark over light. Yeah. Yeah. With watercolor, there's a very specific process in which you have to paint, and you never really have full control. At least if you paint in a loose style. So it's this kind of controlled chaos on the page, which is exciting.
You use a dry fabric, or do you wet it down?
Depends.
This may be a little bit in the weeds, but I'm very curious about this.
Yeah, so there's different techniques. Like if you want a soft edge, you go wet on wet, so you pre-wet the paper, and then you put in pigment, and then that creates like a kind of blurry bokeh effect, if you will, like a blurred camera focus. But if you want more kind of sharper details, then you paint, wet onto dry. Paper's dry, pigment stays put. And that's part of the thing I like about watercolor, is that there are so many techniques, and it's a 2D medium, right? It's flat, but you have to kind of create the illusion of depth. So, working with like lost and found edges, soft edges, hard edges, it's constant challenge.
Yeah, and there's a transparency to watercolor. You have to plan ahead a lot. You can't just lay down a color and go like, oh wait, I wanted to put this other thing underneath that or on top of it. Like, well,
yeah, you have to go. You work from light to dark. So if there's a part on the page that you want pure white, you can't touch it. Because once you touch it, you can't make it lighter. You can't, it's not like a acrylic or oil where you can just dab a lighter color. So it's very, it's chaos, but with some rules that kind of structures the process.
And so many parallels to bicycling, I think, because kind of like riding on an old gravel road, like there are no like really firm and clear boundaries, and the day gets darker and you get stuck out because you got lost because you didn't plan ahead. So
yeah, or also like you just controlling the bike. If you're descending gravel and you're totally ham fisting it like super tight, that's when you have to let it move around you a little bit and kind of work with the terrain.
Let go, let it happen.
To some extent. You gotta brake a little bit too.
Right.
I'm curious for gravel, because at least around where we're at, there is gravel to be found, but it's not the most common mode of roads that one could cycle on. Would you have any tips for folks who maybe live around gravel or have thought about picking up a bike or kind of getting into it? Because a lot of folks I talk with, gravel is a definite barrier to entry, or there's a bit of trepidation or burden with that. What have been some of your findings, or would you have recommendations for folks looking to get started if they're living around gravel?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, tires are probably the most important, component on your bike. Well, at all times, but in particular with gravel, it's only part of the bike that touches the ground, and how high the pressure is or how low is going to dictate, whether you get rattled to death or how much purchase your tires have, on the surface. I'd say, run them slightly lower than you would think. We have this one interview with the guy that owns Silka, the pump brand. But prior to that, he was a big engineer working to develop the first aero wheels and bikes. Consulted with like Lance Armstrong, Peter Sagan, all that stuff. And we have this whole episode on trying to find your ideal tire pressure, and it can be summed up with this: if it feels fast, it's not, and what you're looking for is smooth. So typically, what happens is people pump up their tires super hard, and that transmits all the high frequency vibrations, and that's like a proxy for speed. But because it's so hard, you're kind of bumping over the surface, and that's super easy to do on a gravel road, right? Instead of moving forward, you're expending a lot of energy going up and down. Whereas if you had a wider tire, more supple tire, run at lower pressures, the tire will kind of deform over the surface, make for a smoother ride, and you'll ultimately just go quicker. Another big thing,
it doesn't feel as fast.
Right. Even though it doesn't feel as fast. Well, when it feels fast, it's actually suboptimal, is what he said.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, he walks around, he'll go to the big races like Paris-Roubaix, where there's big cobble sections. And he said he's got this super ultra accurate gauge, and he carries it in like a Beretta case. And on the case, the case, it says the truth. Because he found because what he found was even on pro teams, they can have the gauges on their pumps could be wildly inaccurate, so you can never dial it in exactly. So he'd bring it, when he's consulting with like Bora Hansgrove or something, and Peter's gonna go for the win at Paris-Roubaix. They'll make decisions on where they think the decisive moment in the race is going to happen, whether it's going to be on the cobbles, then they'll run it a little bit lower. If they think it's going to happen on the paved section, then they'll run it a little bit higher and really think it out. And I know my channel is all about non-competitive cycling, and that is true, but I do appreciate the science.
And you don't have to be competitive to like science. As a matter of fact, it's better if you're not.
Right.
And again, I don't want to rain on a parade. If anybody who likes to do anything, go do the thing. If it doesn't hurt somebody else, that's great.
Yeah.
But also, yes, there's a lot that science can teach us, even if we're not competitive. Just because we're not trying to win races doesn't mean that we don't want the newest, the most current, the best knowledge available. And I suppose with that, there's a couple things that made me think of this. One, what you mentioned, that sometimes bicycling events can just evolve into drinking. But I did want to ask you, when you are in Portland, is there any particular shop that you like to go to procure your own alcoholic beverages?
Yeah, so I was talking to Aaron about this before the show started. He asked me what my favorite beer was. I was like, it's whiskey. I just can't do it. I can't do the gluten anymore. Like I get really puffy and gassy, but for some reason, like, Scotch or bourbon or something, doesn't bother me as much.
Science.
So yeah. So in terms of my favorite liquor store, it was the one that was close to Clever Cycles. I forget what it was called. But they always had
across the street. Or no, you're talking about the liquor store.
Yeah, the liquor store. It was next to the Burgerville.
Yeah.
It's
a good combo, right?
Yeah. But they had
it's
a
like
super
on 12th and Hawthorne.
Yeah, that place.
I think it's just called Hawthorne Liquor Store.
Something like, yeah. But they've got a really good selection. At the time I was super into bourbon, and they had what was it called? It was a bourbon by Willett, like a 107, Willett 107 bourbon. And is before it became super popular. It sounds so hipster now, but
Hey,
But
sometimes you're just into something before it's cool. It happens.
but back then, I mean, it was one of the
Hashtag bike fishing.
Yeah, it was one of the best drinking bourbons, and you could buy it for $25. But then
That's not bad, right?
after it blew up, now it's like it's always out of stock, and if it is in stock, it's like 50 or 60 bucks. But they always had like a steady supply of it there.
There we go. Nice.
Well, you know where there's a place nearby to the liquor store that Russ mentioned that also happens to have some pretty fine beverages?
Why,
Yes,
it's
yes, I
even
do.
on the same street as far as the numbered avenues.
It's true. 12th Avenue.
Yes.
Nice.
What is this
Further
place?
south on Division,
That's
that
right.
would be the Beer Mongers.
Nice tie-in.
Open consecutively for more than 4,000 days now.
Yes,
They've
congratulations
never
again.
closed ever since they opened.
Wow.
For any reason. You can always get your beer, especially in the times when maybe you need some. So, yeah, no, they're great. And I haven't been there in a good long while. I do know that they have been inventive. They've got Paul's Patio now. Paul is one of their patrons. And they named the patio after him because he's always there. And so why shouldn't he get his own patio? And one of the big draws of the Beer Mongers was live sports with sound. And so it's there. They've got when there's no rain coming out of the sky, there's a large television mounted outside. So I'm opening this in honor of the Beer Mongers. And of course, we recommend that anybody who is able to support any local small business, but particularly that one, if you're near it. So, yeah.
There's a speaking of drinking establishments, there's that whiskey bar where I met you last, Sidecar in Mississippi.
Yeah, it's a really narrow area, right?
Yeah, narrow is a good way to describe it. But super small rectangular space, but they've got the big library, ladder, and whiskey up and down. A really good selection.
Yeah, it's not quite steampunk, but it's in that as far as the decor is concerned. But yeah, that was the last time that I saw you. I was coming back from work, and just was like, hey, Russ, you're in town. Let's hang out. And so yes, Sidecar, not a bad place to be. But only if you're not claustrophobic, I think, or if ordering your favorite whiskey would make you less claustrophobic.
Right. It is a cozy space, so
it is.
For any of our YouTube stream watchers who feel a bit out of the loop, the Beer Mongers is our only sponsor for the Sprocket Podcast. So eternal thanks to them and for their support of the show, as well as our generous Patreon supporters.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm thinking now of things that drive you to drink. Russ, if you're willing, can we talk
Things
a little
that
bit?
bike you to drink, maybe?
No, drive. It's Russ, you've dealt with your fair share of negativity on the internet. One of the downsides, or one of the more difficult sides of having a prominent presence about bicycling on the internet, is that someone else on the internet thinks you're wrong.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe how it ties into some of your sticker campaigns?
Yeah. That's one of the most challenging things about running a YouTube channel, especially as it grows, is that, there's just the internet comments. I felt like I had a pretty healthy and grounded self-esteem prior, but imagine like being insulted for no reason, about 20, 30 times a day, every single morning. I feel like I don't care like who, how grounded you are. At some point it starts to chip away. And, I've been doing the YouTube, seriously for about 3-4 years, and it just aggregates over time. It's like a death by a million paper cuts.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten better. I've developed some filters, and, me personally right now, I just don't have like a zero tolerance policy. If I can see that someone's not going to be productive, then, just
how do you tell if they're not going to be productive?
Well, if it leads with something, it's not very hard.
No, you're right.
So that's one of the toughest things. And what's funny is, when the channel is small, I liken it to like a house party. It's all your friends, everyone's really chill, everyone knows each other. There's no beefs or something. But then as the channel has grown, It's like having that same house party and then your friends inviting their friends and then inviting their tertiary friends. And then
We've all been there.
Yeah, and then at some point there's like just some asshole that that just walked in from the street, drinking
Who the hell
your
invented
beer.
this guy? Yeah.
Yeah. So that has been one of the challenges as the channel's grown. It's just the amount of negative comments increases, and I'm realizing that's just par for course. You know, most days, you know, it's fine. Some days it just really just bothers me to no end. But
And rightly
it has,
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
mean,
has led,
yeah, go ahead.
it has led to some interesting hashtags we've created. You know, so I remember one comment, you know, I did a video about why I like riding in long sleeve shirts. And this one person's like, you know, what is all this? You're losing all these watts. You know, why are you dressing the floopy flappy? I was like,
there it is.
So he started, you know, this hashtag, the floopy flappy, where for if people don't want to wear Lycra, which then led to, you know, gravel casual, and then gravel specific. Yeah, so it's, you know, sometimes I will take the negative comments and try to spin it on its head and make it into a sticker.
I do like that.
I especially appreciated the gravel specific being put on things that were very not gravel specific,
yeah.
or things that weren't even necessarily related to the bike.
Yeah, for sure.
This is entirely anecdotal, but I've noticed you hang out when a video is posted, and then like 30 minutes, 45 minutes in, it feels like you just have to give yourself a break, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to respond to comments. You know, usually when the video launches, that's when it has the most view velocity and people are watching and want to engage. So I'll monitor the comments for the first couple hours, first day, and then after that, just put it to bed.
Is that like the half-life of negative comments?
Well, you'd be surprised, you know.
Okay.
But it's one of those things where, you know, like I'll log on to our YouTube, and, you know, there's a whole comment section. You have to moderate it, and I try not to read the comments, but sometimes you can't unread something, you know, as you're moderating. It just, even though you delete it right away, it just sticks in your head. But in some ways, or sometimes the comments lead to actually interesting videos. Like the big one is our painter video.
Yes.
How is that pronounced? Yes.
It's not Penier. Although, you know, see, here's the thing. I don't begrudge anyone, like, however they want to pronounce it. I what bothered me was when people were accusing me of purposefully butchering the French language, but didn't do any research themselves. So that was an instance where, you know, I review lots of bike bags, and I'll pronounce it a certain way. And every, like, you know, I could put it by the clock. There's inevitably someone that's going to tell me I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. So, you know, I had it up to my ears, decided to make a once and for all explainer video about it, reached out to a bunch of lexicographers and etymologists to try to get an expert in language pronunciation. And we totally lucked out and got the editor from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, who's also a cyclist and also edited the French Merriam-Webster. So he was like the perfect person.
Yeah.
And he was super articulate too. So that was great.
Yeah.
One thing I really appreciate about the channel, and this is something that I feel like is really hard to do, is we talked, I think, when you did one of the watercolor shows at a bike shop here in Portland, and you were talking about sort of the slow and steady approach. And I think one of the big aspects of that is that what you put out there just has this integrity, and it's something that's so easy to slip on. And with the amount of companies that you work with, I'm curious sort of what your process is with that, and sort of like where your line is, and what you try to hold yourself in the channel to, because I think it shows that you really care about that, and that's not something that's true for all YouTubers out there these days.
Yeah, we've always, you know, try to keep a pretty strict editorial line. I mean, before YouTube, I did a lot of freelance writing. Like I wrote for Memento magazine back when they were around, Bicycle Times, and, you know, like in those traditional print publications, there's always this tension between, you know, editorial and advertising. So having seen that, I knew when we were to do our own creative outlet, I just wanted to make that kind of break pretty clear. So for us, you know, we want the financial support to come from the viewer, because ultimately they're going to be the most important person in the relationship, right? They're consuming the content, they're the community. And when creating media like this, you've got options. You can do advertising with brands. That's kind of a quick influx of money, or sponsorship, which seems like initially the best deal, but in some ways is golden handcuffs, especially in the bike industry. I realized that if you get sponsored by one brand, sometimes they don't play well with other brands, and then there's this well, you can't talk about those brands. And ultimately, I wanted to be able to talk about the products I wanted to talk about and the way I wanted to talk about them. And the only way that we could do that is if we weren't taking money, in the form of advertising from bike brands, but being supported by the viewer base. And doing it that way via Patreon and sticker sales is the long runway approach, right? Because it's like you're building a business $3 a month at a time, or $7 a month at a time, and as opposed to doing a brand deal with a brand, they'll pay you $25,000 for the year to talk about whatever said product. So we've chosen to do the long runway approach, partly because that gives us ultimate editorial integrity, but also because realistically in the bike industry there are only a handful of brands that have money to advertise and that would be interested in advertising with us, because we don't do the sports cycling, right? We'll approach a brand, they'll be like, what do? You don't race, you don't, you're never on the podium.
You're no good to us here.
Yeah. But realistically, it's like we aren't that attractive to many brands, and we can't grow more brands, but we can grow a larger audience. And we're not going to win everyone over to contribute to the channel, but if we get a small percentage over time, there's actually no ceiling to growth when you think about it that way. There's a ceiling to growth with the number of bike brands, but in terms of, the viewership, it's a slow road, but I think ultimately it's the most sustainable one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just for anybody listening out there, if you enjoy the content on this channel and you're not donating yet, Russ would never just come out and say it, but I'll say it. Give him your money. Come on. It's good stuff. It's backed by science. It's not biased. It's the perfect bike channel.
It's biased, but you're very forward about it, and so
I think people know my people know my biases. In terms of like the review stuff. So like I've reviewed about close to 70 bikes on the channel, and we don't do pay to play, right? Some magazines, some websites, they won't even touch or review the bike unless there's some advertising dollars, slip that way. But we've been like, we want to do just bike reviews, and try not to be influenced by any money. Just lay that as it is. We've reviewed super cheap bikes, $600 all the way up to $10,000 full titanium like electronic shifting bikes. I try to treat them the same. I think of bikes as coffee, whereas there are certain tasting notes and you try to pick them apart, but objectively it's just an object amongst other objects. So that's been my approach on the bike reviews.
But it's also addicting, and you have to have it every day.
That's true.
Just like coffee. Yes.
I will say though, like I've this past year, there was a point when I was like, I actually don't want to review any more bikes unless they're super interesting, and I just want to ride the bikes I own. Like I hit this point of, I losing familiarity with the own bikes that I love, because I'm always testing other bikes.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in Missoula for the winter, you're going to hit up Bear Claw for a fat Frank, right?
Right. They make some beautiful bikes, by the way. Bear Claw, good stuff.
I am curious. We talked about the Floopy Flappy life, and I'm a big fan of that myself. I think, as a matter of fact, it was an early post on the Pathless Huddle blog about the concept of you're doing it wrong, and just saying that, that's not a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. Don't let it be a thing. Do your thing. Right. And flat pedals for me, I think, was one of the first. I think that was the subject of the post. But that really encapsulates kind of the attitude of everything that you do. It's like, hey, does this do what you want it to do? Is it good for you? And if that's the case, then who cares what anybody thinks about it? Which also is probably encapsulated with, you've been doing some croc bicycling, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. Tell us how that feels.
Very, very
Are
lonely.
these SPD Crocs?
No, they're just plain old Crocs. So the way that started was so Daniel Malloy from Tumbleweed Bikes, came over and he went bike fishing, and he and his partner wore Bedrocks, and Laura wore Bedrocks, and just to be contradictory, I wore Crocs as a joke. But then when we were riding, I was like, dang, these are actually really comfortable. So after that video, I just started wearing, just kind of wearing Crocs, and found that I really liked it. I bought a slightly smaller size, so it wasn't so like
flabby.
Yeah, so loose in there. It just raised so much internet ire. It's like you've given up on life if you wear Crocs.
Everybody's saying you can't do that, and you're saying, why not?
Right. And that's and honestly, that's one of the things that motivates the channel, is like, why not? One of the silly things I did was someone, a very generous viewer, lent us some power meter pedals.
Ooh.
Like there's like $800 pedals, and they measure your watts. And of course, being on brand, the first thing I did was I put platform adapters on them.
Nice.
and rode my bike in Crocs just to see, Croc watts.
Yeah.
Hashtag Croc watts.
I see another sticker coming.
Yeah, one of the
after you.
Yeah, one of the phrases I think that's really sticking. We're always like just trying goofy things because they make fun stickers and shirts, but the idea of party pace, right?
Yeah.
So typically you go on a group ride, there's like the A group, there's the B group, people are very apologetic. I'm going to be slow. I like to ride in the back, all this stuff. And there wasn't like a positive way to say, I'm okay with riding the pace I am. It always like, I'm in the B group, or I'm going to ride slow. So I wanted like an affirmative way where you can just own your pace, if you're not, trying to bust your balls and be on the podium. And party pace just is like, that's it, and you can, it's not a specific speed. It's more of like an attitude, you're not, you're there to ride your own ride. You're unapologetically not racing if that's your thing. But I love that as a concept.
Absolutely. And the stickers are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Aren't they glow in the dark and sparkly?
The stickers are 80s hologram, and the patches are glow in the dark.
Okay, there we go. That's fantastic.
I feel like no follow-up to the previous episode on the Sprocket with Russ would be complete without talking about bike fishing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Did we get into that last time, or should we go there now?
Yeah,
let's go there now, because obviously I'm sure you've updated some of your approaches since the last time we talked about it. It's been 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's at its essence, bike fishing hasn't changed. It's but I started that on the lark, kind of at the time when bike packing was exploding, but it was very focused on like ultralight and minimal, and you have to be really Spartan in your approach. And I was like, that's just, it's not me. Let's do something silly that no one can turn into a competitive thing. So, prior to the hashtag, I'd been fishing by bike, but the hashtag just made it kind of quasi-official. And this is the fascinating thing. Like when we first started posting about bike fishing, people were giving me all sorts of crap in the comments. That's not, you're not a real cyclist, or blah, 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 blah. But, fast forward, and there's been brand videos that use the word bike fishing.
Ooh.
There's, like different, like, fishing brands and cycling brands have created brand content around bike fishing.
And just like the 107 whiskey, it's super expensive now.
Yeah. So it was, kind of, I authentically love fishing by bike, but it was also a bit of a test to see, if you can wag the dog. And I feel like, some brands fit.
So litigation is pending for the Pathless Pedaled? Is this
yeah,
what
well,
I'm
when
hearing?
Specialized does a bike fishing video, we'll call up our big building lawyers. And
I do know a
I'm just
great
waiting for
contractor.
the
Yeah.
10-car Sprocket edition.
yeah.
Or, sorry, Pathless Pedaled edition.
Well, we expect the Sprocket edition too.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
Thought that was a given.
I've already contacted Ron Popeil. He's going to build us a Pocket Fisherman Sprocket edition.
Nice. But it's, it's super fun. Prior to moving to Missoula, Laura and I were actually training, tangentially related to bike fishing. this event called the Flyathlon, and it was a trail running and fly fishing
No
event.
way.
Yeah, it was in Colorado, and you could either be a really good fisherman because when you caught fish, it would deduct from your running time, or you could be a really fast runner.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, this is awesome.
What was your strategy? Which one were you angling towards?
Definitely the better fisherman. So,
Okay.
but unfortunately, that was like right when we moved, and there were wildfires, and we had to stop our training. So we had to cancel the plane tickets to Colorado. But it's unfinished business.
Indeed, something to be done soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remind me, Guthrie, you haven't done it yet, have you?
Bike fishing
Yeah.
or bike running? No,
or both.
Flyathloning.
Something like that. Yeah, for our listeners who've been tuning into the Sprocket, I recently completed a journey from Portland over to Eastern Oregon and brought the bike raft. So I'm finally in that zone, I guess. I just wanted something
genre
to social distance this summer. And that's as close to things with water and bikes as I've gotten, which is pretty close, all things considered, but that was pretty fun.
So where'd you take the raft?
So far the Deschutes River, and I'm pretty close to the Wallowa River. So right now I'm talking with a kid that I grew up with actually, who's run it quite a few times, and basically we're figuring out where the barbed wire fences are. And after we get that sorted, it's gonna be a go.
Because the barbed wire fences go across the river, right?
Oh yes, they do.
So yeah,
Yep.
so you can't you can't take inflatable things down just anywhere.
It's gonna be some portaging, like if you do the GDMBR, you're packing over logs, but if you do the Wallowa, you're packing over fences. So I've got time. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
It's great. Russ, is there any hope for some pack rafting videos coming from Path Less Pedaled anytime soon?
It would be fun. I've got so many hobbies.
Yeah.
I just really got into birding like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who you? It's kind of like fishing, but you're not getting wet.
I'm right there with you. I've adopted a family of scrub jays and crows, actually.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it because it activates this part of my brain that likes to observe and categorize, right?
Yeah.
And I think like if you're into like coffee tasting or beer tasting or like bike testing, like there's this aspect of the brain where it's like, oh, what is this thing? How does it compare to this other thing? What are the details about this? What are the conditions in which, I can see this thing? So for me, it's less about looking at cute, fluffy animals and more almost like the game of it. And just understanding where they're flying from, what their behaviors are. But also like a big realization was, they're actually, if you look at a bird, it's usually in the act of trying to kill something or avoid being killed. It looks cute while doing it, but it's usually eating an insect, attacking something or trying to flee from an attack.
I think this might be the difference between like Montana birds and Portland birds.
I don't know, no, but
none of the corvids I observe are like, well, some of them maybe have already killed something.
Like a good example is we were out in the backyard creek, and super cute bird, American dipper, kind of gray, nondescript, likes to swim in the water, and we just watched it like pick up a big stonefly, and then it bashed it against a rock and ate it. Picked up a fish, bashed the, that's its modus operandi, and also like the shrike that likes to impale its prey before it eats it. That's pretty fascinating life of birds.
It's impressive, yeah, and all while eating so much and staying so fit. I think that's the thing I appreciate most about birds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're ready for your big year. Like next year is going to be the one you started, but you're ready for it.
Yeah. I don't know if I can talk Laura into a big year.
Okay.
But it is challenging. I remember, what started it off was, I got these Instagram binoculars to review. And it's actually quite hard to find a bird. Like you can hear it, you can kind of notice which tree it's in, maybe which quadrant of the tree, but to actually like pick it out amongst the leaves and do it quick enough, there's like all this motor skill, and I don't know, it's been a fun kind of game/activity.
Yeah. Do you have any tips? How do you tell which quadrant of the tree the bird is in?
I don't know. I'm still
All right.
I'm still trying to figure that out. Like Laura is far more observant with me, more observant than I actually talked her into. We biked down to a local birding trail, and she could pick them out of the trees a lot quicker. I mean, I could find them, once she pointed them out, but yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Well, it's low impact too. It's right. Take only pictures and leave only footprints.
It is. Yeah, I
Or what
finally
have
have
you.
an activity that won't upset any vegan viewers.
Right. Because that's the one problem with bike fishing is that the fish.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's just like clockwork. It's like I'm waiting for that fish torture comment to pop up any second.
Right.
So, you put out videos at a kind of incredible pace, honestly. I'm curious, like, what are the 3 things you haven't put out that you're just like, no, this is so off the wall that, like, I don't even know if it would stick anywhere.
And would you mind if we did those?
I've got all sorts of ideas for parody videos. Like if I had time and like I had this, I wanted to make a parody video on ultralight bike packing, actually.
Yes.
And the idea, Brock, I was actually going to ask you to do the voiceover because I need like a deep, commanding voice. And first there was bike touring, then there is, then you broke freedom from the racks. There was bike packing, and now freedom from the bags, and it's pants packing, where you just have all sorts of like cargo pockets all over your shirt. It's like no racks, no rules.
One man goes into the woods
So you got to take
with all he
like,
can carry.
the next step further, where like somebody's just biking in their underwear and then like holding whatever they can like in one arm.
I wanted to get I wanted to get anything cages and like duct tape it to your leg and just put
Oh, if you have some old tires, like stick the bars in the tires, and there's like the peel away, like you're cutting the carcass of this like elk you found in the woods or something.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about like stuff I would actually do. Like this is, I would buy like a cargo suit. Absolutely. Exoskeleton for the true bike packer.
Right.
You would definitely bike tour in just your underwear.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll send you the B-roll for that, Russ.
There you go. Thanks. I also wanted to do like a really dramatic Rafa-esque video on like a carbon fiber basket and call it the raft skit, where it's like the screen's completely black, and then you have like this hard light kind of lighting the edge of like a walled basket, and it's like the performance basket is here.
Where do you work in the espresso shop for that one?
Right. And then there's going to be like the raft skit, but in the Rafa font. And
love it.
Or like the idea was to have like the walled basket in black, and one kind of wire is pink, because how they do that like little.
Oh right.
You gotta have your flair.
Right.
Well, you based on the folks you've interviewed in the past, your tier 1 through tier 5 manufacturers. So I feel like you've got to do that one.
That's true. I actually got one of the coolest emails I've gotten recently was from the grandson of Edwald, who is the family namesake of Walled Baskets. I think they're made in Kentucky, and he emailed about like doing some review stuff, and I was like, what we should do is a factory tour. A live factory tour of Walled. Like people would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen soon. They're working on a rebranding project, but once that's done, we'll get a live factory tour of Walled baskets.
That'd be
Nice.
exciting. Rebranding always makes me nervous because like the thing that you love sometimes just falls prey to bad imaging because
true.
somebody thinks it needs it. And sometimes it goes well. I'm sure with Walled it will. But do you remember Viso energy drinks from your time in Portland? It was a regional energy beverage. Used to be my favorite way to get caffeine. They had this diet. It was like grapefruit grape. It was 300 milligrams of caffeine and no sugar. It was the most amazing thing you'd ever had.
Tons of B vitamins too.
I used to have 2 a day, and I started to wonder why I was feeling weird, and I think that was probably why. But yeah, they went through a couple of different rebranding things, and the first time it was just like the image started getting weird, and it never really came back to what it started with. And then they reformulated the whole thing, and they were like, "We got to get rid of the vitamin taste," and I realized that was exactly why I was there, is because it tastes like vitamins. So. Oh well, but Pathless Pedal has gone through a couple of different iterations, and I don't know. I guess you've changed like kind of the imaging logos, that sort of thing, right? Like you've updated over time. What do you have? I suppose maybe the current one is your favorite. That's why it's the current one.
Yeah.
How do you think about the evolution of your brand over time?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like looking back, I'm glad that we didn't name the website back then, or the entity, like I love bike touring, because things change.
Was that even a possibility? Was that
probably not, but like it was fairly kind of nebulous. Pathless Pedal could mean many things. I like the ambiguity of it, because back then, we were totally into self-supported bike touring, but it's definitely changed over time. Now it's like overnights or gravel or all these other extracurricular activities you can do with it. And I like that it's been fluid enough to follow those other passions. I also feel like we're pretty fortunate that we've got a core audience that is willing to indulge like all the weird things I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So that's been a real boon, is that you can still be largely about bikes, but we can follow other tangents. It could be about fishing, could be about birding, could be about art making, things like that. And it's also one of the challenging things, because I know that people discover the website, discover the YouTube channel at different parts of our personal journey. And sometimes it may diverge. So sometimes we lose viewers, sometimes we get viewers back. Sometimes, completely new people come on. So it saddens me a little bit when we lose people that have been there for a long time, but it's just life. It's like you grow apart, your interests, as friends, as people. But I definitely try to make it as malleable kind of a brand as possible. Because it would suck if you just did one thing only for the rest of your life.
One trick pony.
Yeah, because you always change, you have new interests. So yeah, I feel like that's probably one of the smarter decisions, was to make it kind of ambiguous enough that it can metamorphosize with our own lives.
Tell me the guy from Coldplay is not getting tired.
Right.
Just doing the one thing over and over again.
Yeah. Or like just some band that was popular in the 80s, and it's like, play that one song.
I'm looking extra hard at Brock, but no reason in particular. That's kind of the secret to YouTube burnout, is just to do one thing. I mean, look at the number of channels that have sort of been like, hey, sorry folks, like I'm doing this now. So I feel like it's nice that you haven't, you paint, but you haven't painted yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
Aha.
Like what I did there.
Nice. It is interesting. I feel like we're on the last quarter of the way to getting to 100,000, and that's been a goal I've had for a long time. So if you've noticed on the channel, like I'm putting out sometimes 4 to 5 videos a week, and I think I'm getting into that mode where it's like I just want to sprint to the end, get to 100,000, and for whatever reason, I don't know if that means success or whatever, but it's been a milestone for so long that I just want to get it done and over with. I like to describe it as like my creative dirty Kanza. Like we didn't finish DK, and it frustrated me because it's not because like I don't have endurance, it's just a different kind. I'm like a masochist when it comes to creative endurance. But you don't get a medal for that. They don't put you on the podium. I mean, like YouTube comes the closest. You get a silver play button. So
we're going to do a podium for you when you get to 100,000. We're going to do a thing. We'll make this happen somehow.
Yes. Nice. But for me, that's just like, that for me, that's equivalent of completing DK in a creative way. Just having the tenacity, stick with it, to keep making content. And then after that, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation.
Just 2 weeks. That's all. And all you do is wear Crocs and fish.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're just pleased as punch to be wrapped up and to have as many chances to talk to you and chances to be involved in what you and Laura do. And thank you so much for doing it. You're putting a voice out there again for the people who don't care what the masses say and are like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it the way that makes sense. Going to do it at the party pace.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for having me again. One of the things that we were joking about was we should have like a live countdown party. We'll definitely send you guys an invite if it gets to that point.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Aaron, Guthrie, any other questions before we call it a day?
I think I'm good.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks, Russ.
yeah. So do you guys have a particular way you want to close out? Then I'll close out the live stream.
Oh, that's the question we asked to you is as we read our credits, is there any particular fashion, whim, style, or etiquette in which you'd like us to observe? You can also mulligan and just say, read the credits.
just read the credits.
All right.
Sounds good. Should we take every third?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. And thanks to anybody who's still watching on YouTube. I'm not looking at the stream, but thanks for watching.
all.
Well,
from us to
they're not
you.
here for us. They're here for Russ.
Oh, we know. We know why they're here. Cool.
Cool. Well, I'll close out the stream here, and then hold on one second. Speaker view live. All right. Thank you everyone for watching a behind the scenes taping of the Sprocket Podcast. Again, if you're new to the podcast, you should definitely look them up. What was the sprocketpodcast.com was the URL, Brock?
The sprocketpodcast.com, and everywhere, every good place podcasts can be found.
But not on iTunes, because that's not a thing anymore.
Doesn't exist.
No. So they've got over 500 episodes of bike goodness. Lots of amazing stories that they've told over a decade. So definitely check them out. And let's see what else. We've got on the channel later this week, or not this channel, but on the Alternative Cycling Network. Again, we're going to have State Bike be our guest there. So definitely check that out. And also, I don't have it near me. Otherwise, I would show you. But Ortlieb just did a new drop. They've redesigned a bunch of their bike packing bags. And one of the coolest things is they've redesigned the fork bag with its own specific mount. And it's engineered so it can connect to a suspension fork. One literally just arrived today. So I think I'm going to film that video tomorrow and probably post it up tomorrow just to have some breaking news on the YouTube channel. But hope you guys enjoyed this content. And if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description below, links to Patreon, all that good stuff. Buy Party Pace sticker or patch, or don't. Just keep watching. And as always, keep the supple side down. Ending and all right.